Okay, quick intro. This podcast is with Jenny, who I'm not sure I make it clear at the outset. I knew her from our community TLC and sort of like Koki, who hopefully you've seen her podcast. Jenny's another one that we consider ourselves the luckiest for sure. And we truly are. And I hope all those in this process either are starting to feel it or are going to feel it eventually, because there's nothing greater than going through recovery if you do the work, which is things like having great conversations with people like ourselves. So I hope you enjoy this one. One of my favorite lines she has is how she realized due to drinking, she was becoming a supporting character in her own life. And she was handed a script she didn't like, but didn't know she had the power to change it or even speak up. But she did. And beyond that, it's funny. This was filmed about 7 months ago. I took a kind of hiatus after this. I think I did one more with her about a month later. But I took a hiatus due to my ADD before I launched this podcast in October. So we're catching up. Going to start having more recently filmed episodes after a few more of these. So this one was in the middle of the summer, wearing T-shirts. And I can still tell it was old because I hate the lighting and the background and all that. So improvements to come if you're watching on YouTube. And we do talk about a couple communities and the power of them. And speaking of which, my own community will be launching very early February, right now slated for February 2nd, which is a Monday. It's about a week and a half from now. Might slip to the 4th. That Wednesday to give me 2 weeks. Hopefully no later, but I'm kind of going through some marketing changes right now and I want to be prepared. But I hope you'll stay tuned in the show notes and for announcements on that. It's going to be called Leapt. And there is a link where you can even sign up now for the wait list. And it's going to be fun. So I think that'll do it. I'm not going to cut an ending video. So I'll ask you now on what better time to just pop right on if you're on Spotify or Apple. On the main page on Apple, just scroll down where you can just give it a rating, quick rating. And on Spotify, you just have to click the 3 dots on the main page. It says give a rating. Would greatly appreciate it. And a review on Apple would be heavenly as well. So that's it. And on YouTube, like, share, subscribe. So thanks for watching and or listening. Enjoy. Okay, welcome to the Cappy Hour podcast. My guest today, Jennifer Bridgman, aka Jenny. Hey.
Hey, so happy to be here.
Likewise, amazing.
I'm so excited to be here, and we've had a few minutes to catch up, and I don't know where our conversation's going to go. It could go a million directions, but I'm so excited, and I think it's going to be a really fun conversation, and I'm really honored to sit and talk life and recovery, which I know for both of us is one of our favorite topics.
Absolutely. We could talk forever. In fact, I'll start with that. We were texting leading up to this, and you would text me last week just saying you went to another concert last night, and that you said, I must say, I thought of you while there and so grateful to have this upcoming chance to talk with you next week about music and sobriety and how lucky we are in this wild and precious life. Jenny's a writer, as you can tell. It's going to be a beautiful chat. I know it. My teen kept wondering why I kept crying as I was singing and dancing last night, but I told him sometimes it's because the love and gratitude I feel is so big, it has nowhere left to run but down my cheeks. And I love that.
Yeah, well, it's all true. It's
amazing.
So Cappy, when the first few times I heard you share, I just immediately felt this connection to you because I know you love music and lyrics. I believe when we get sober and kind of reawaken to our life, lyrics can take on a whole deeper new meaning. And so my last weekend, my middle son, I have three sons, my middle turned 13, and for his birthday, I took him to see Coldplay when they came into town here in the Bay Area in California. And he's my music guy out of my three. He's an actor and plays piano, and he really likes music, especially from the 80s and 90s. So no matter how I'm doing as a parent, I know I've got that right. you know. But Coldplay, as we can talk about how music has changed for us and whatnot. But just sitting there and experiencing the moment with him, I just cried. And I am just so, I'm okay with letting not just my kids or my family see me emotional these days, but I've decided to just live out loud ever since I became sober and decided to finally own the story that I thought was pretty dark and sad and should be kept secret. And now it's, they say you can't dim the dark without dimming the light. And I don't want any dimming anymore. But I don't know if you want to get into a lot of things like right off the bat, but um, Coldplay had been someone I've seen numerous times, and it just kind of represents like seeing them before I got sober and the couple times since being in recovery, and how songs affect me differently, and the memories that come up and whatnot. But I just in a nutshell, I really thought when I first got sober that parts of me would have to die. Like the parts of me that loved going out to big events or loving music. For me, I just love music so much. It makes me feel so much. And it almost scared me that to keep on, once I stopped numbing and how do you go out and do these social things without drinking? Like that was a big thing for me. And I've had years of doing things sober, throughout my 3 pregnancies. I actually got sober twice. So I had years in my 30s where I wasn't supposed to be drinking, but going to those concerts and not drinking then, it was all I paid attention to, like who got to drink and who wasn't. I was never fully there. And so for me, everything is new. But I have reclaimed that and it's beautiful. And I'm like, yay, I get to talk about it with Cappy. I know he'll get it, because some people don't. Some people are like, it's a little uncomfortable when I go deep.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I love that you just said reclaimed because I mentioned to you, I joined a new community because they let members host meetings and I love it. And I love it because I can open with a song, which is so great. I love Louise on TLC always opens with a song and usually with a reason behind it. And I want to do a topic. I've got a million. It's funny. Other hosts struggle to come up with topics. And I'm like, I've got a million. I'll give you guys a list. Particularly because I started a YouTube channel in advance of this podcast. So I'm so happy I did. My marketing guy forced me. He's like, you have to do that. Just do quick videos. Forced me to do way more research and even come up with a lot of topics. But anyway, one I want to do is reclaiming music and even particular songs. Like I couldn't listen to Faithfully by Journey because it reminded me of in high school going to school dances and not having anyone to dance with, literally just standing in the corner and doing that. And I recently opened a meeting with Best Song Ever by One Direction, which really is one of the best songs ever, particularly to just get you in a mood. And my rock bottom actually had to do with taking my niece to a One Direction concert. So I couldn't listen to One Direction for 10 years,
Yeah.
but now I'm taking it back in sobriety. So I love that concept. Absolutely.
We get to reclaim them, right? We get the pen back, not just in our story, but we get to go back and, make a new version of something that, I previously would have I had this really good ability of just putting things out of my mind. Like something horrible would happen and I could just avoid it and just, think that if I could just ignore it, that it wouldn't be part of my story. But that nothing ever, it dwells and it festers and it gets infected and all these things that all of a sudden I realize when you just can hold things up in the light and relook at them with compassion and understanding and have this chance to reclaim them as something perhaps even beautiful, there's so much healing and it's so freeing to reclaim something like that. And Faithfully by Journey, I mean, come on, that song is one of the most beautiful. I actually spent most of my 20s living down in LA with a musician, and we can talk about that a bit as well. But there's a line in there: "Loving a music man ain't always what it's supposed to be." So that that was definitely a relationship that taught me a great deal about pain and ultimately my strength. But yeah, it's a big part of my drinking story and how I ramped up. I was second fiddle to a guitar for many years, so I get it. I love the music. Yeah,
And what was that line? You said it so fast.
loving a
Uh,
music man ain't always what it's supposed to be.
oh, and I know it well, except not the exact line because I
Well, I'm not.
never.
I don't know if I'm comfortable singing it like you, but
I was gonna ask you.
I'll save people.
Loving a music man ain't
No,
exactly what it's supposed to be.
will you stand by me? I'm forever yours, faithfully. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sad.
Uh,
I
that I've seen Journey a few times in concert, by the way, and it's a great show. And my middle son loves playing "Don't Stop Believing" on the piano, which is always really fun, to hear that bouncing around my walls. So
yeah, that there's a few others that just yeah, painful. I was a late bloomer. I can't even believe I went to the dances. And but I did. But I literally was the guy that just stood against the wall and had nobody to dance with. Roller Kingdom, the big roller skating place near us, when they said couples only, I was off the dance floor.
Mhm.
Never did. Even prom. I had to go with a girl that I knew from first grade, and then she moved away and she came back, and she was kind of a little bitchy to the point no one really liked her. And I asked her, like, she didn't have, neither one of us had a date, basically. I hate to say it like that. Just point being, yeah, she didn't have a date and I didn't have a date. And
So not like the movies, right? Not it's
yeah,
things you look back and you're like, wait, that's how it turns out. But that's life, right? It's so many things of the reality is quite different than our expectations, and just accepting that and maybe even realizing, wow, this is how it was supposed to be all along. No, I'm raising three kids, and two of them are now teenagers, and it's so interesting raising a child now in such a pivotal time, and having the chance to really just being surrounded by the energy and all these guys hanging out at my house. And I just love being a mom to teenagers. It terrified me for some reason, and now that I'm here, I love it. But it's such a precious time, and it's kind of an invitation for me right now to go back and wrap my arms around that girl that I was at that time, who didn't feel confident or loved or experienced all these awkward things, thinking it's not supposed to be like this. And now having the chance to reclaim that as well. So I used to think things didn't matter, or maybe I was afraid that they would. And now I kind of think everything matters and can be talked about. And it doesn't matter how long ago something happened, we can still go back and heal from it, or just understand it, maybe just look with a softer lens, and be okay with it, and just really, like, that's the whole integrated living for me, is going back and accepting there's some parts of me, some phases that are harder to look at and wrap my arms around, but I'm really trying to do that now. But the teenage years and those dances and things, not easy. No.
oh, brutal, brutal. And my family, the Irish Catholic family I didn't tell them anything. We didn't talk about anything. The one girlfriend I had, I would go to the movies, meet her at the movies. So I'd go with a buddy, she'd come with a friend. I never even told my parents. I would just tell them I was going with a buddy, like never even told them that I had a date, and then certainly never discussed my misery. So
Yeah,
yeah,
we
it
had
was
very loving family, but we didn't talk about a whole lot of things, emotions or things. And um, I had a boyfriend, but he would pull up and I'd run out of the house and, sneak out after the party later. And it wasn't that he wasn't a great guy or my parents wouldn't have liked him. I don't know. Things were just different back then, or maybe I just was prone to keeping secrets. I'm not sure what it is, but my oldest has a girlfriend now, and she's over all the time, and she's darling, and it's so different than my experience with it, and I'm really happy for him. And I think if I had started living more openly a lot earlier, it would have saved me a lot of confusion and suffering, and certainly a lot of drinking, in later years. But I feel you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is hard. I mean, so if my mother's listening to this, which hopefully she is, she was raised. Yeah. Hello, mother. She originally said, I'm not going to be able to listen to your podcast because I don't like those headphone things, those earbud things in my ears. And it's like, there's a million different options. And then she emailed me and said, oh, I found something that I don't mind. So for better or worse. But yeah, she was raised not talking about anything. And it's still hard. I vowed, I don't have kids, but my niece and nephew are like kids to me. And my nephew's now 18. And I thought I would totally be like the big brother talking to him about dating and giving advice and all that. But it is hard to broach those subjects and get kids to talk. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I will say that part of my recovery, no one, I have a brother and a sister, and we're real close. And, we all live close geographically and we're close in relationship, but I'm the only one who struggled with drinking. And it has really, I would like to think that my being open and struggling and them standing by me, we, we are more expressive now, and we do talk about things that otherwise perhaps we wouldn't have had I not had my struggles. And it could have gone either way. I mean, I had no idea how close I was to losing my family by the end. Things got real tough, and I was just purposely separating how much time I spent with them because it was getting in the way of how much time I could drink. And so I was pretty oblivious to all this, the walls, the invisible ones, and the actual distance that I was putting there. But they celebrate with me. I'm able to tell them when things are really hard. And the beauty is, I feel like they, especially my sister, and can tell me her heavy, and I can hold that for her now. It's like I got that back as well, and to be there for other people. My parents and I hug more. I'll go over after sharing my story and tell them bits about my story. And their first reaction is, why would you tell people? Why on earth would you share stuff about your life and family outside of our home? Like, it's not how they were raised. And the idea is just really frightening and uncomfortable for them. And I said, well, Dad, hearing other people's stories saved my life. And if I can ever be of service and just make one person even feel like they're a little bit more understood or not the only one, then that's great. And I can say that no one is more proud of me now than the people who've known me the longest. So that feels really well, especially as my mom is really has progressed dementia at this point. It's the past several years it's gotten quite progressive. And I know before she lost a lot of her memory about who I was and what's going on, she had peace in her heart that I was finally going to be okay.
That's great.
Yeah.
That is, yeah, I hesitate to say anymore. I want to make my mother feel bad. She shouldn't. She was an amazing mother. She was always there. She did everything. But yeah, the first time I ever heard her say, I love you was to the grandkids, not to us. But that, it was never said to her, I don't believe so. So yeah, it's hard. And she was so supportive, but it's funny. I had a therapist tell me she was proud of me once, and it instantly brought tears to my eyes. And I think it was because I hadn't really heard that. Although my mom, I was a great runner. She went to all my races, but I'm not sure I ever heard those words.
Yeah.
Although now I do hear that sometimes.
That is
Although
so interesting. Yeah, I always say there's like the love in our house was always felt. It just wasn't expressed. Like we knew it. It just wasn't expressed. But then every so often when you do hear the words that you didn't know maybe you needed for so long, it was my sister again, the first time someone said to me, "You are enough." And I had never heard that phrase. I had never, that idea was just, I had no idea how not enough I had felt until I invited her to come to an IOP program, which is an intensive outpatient recovery program. I invited her to come on family day and just have the floor for a minute. And I was ready to hear what it was like for her. to love a sister who struggled with substance abuse. And I didn't know what she would say. I didn't know if she was going to pull out one of these, a particular event from Jenny's greatest hits of destruction, like at her wedding or something, like there was a few select ones she could definitely choose, but she didn't at all. It was more that, without going into specifics about what she shared, but it was just her watching me get so used to operating in this way of pulling myself up from this ditch every morning and just like operating like everything was fine. After we'd had some big night out, she could hardly move from bed. And I was like, all right, let's go. And she just realized that this is how she lives. Oh my goodness. So that was later in our 20s. We had taken a trip together. But what she said to me is, I just always wanted my sister to know you are enough. And same thing as you, I had no idea how much I had needed to hear those words. And from her lips in particular, I was an absolute puddle. It's beautiful.
That is beautiful. And the last thing I'll say is I always laugh. My mother, I call it, gives the handshake hug, basically almost like the pat on your back type of
Yeah.
thing. But, she was never, when in church, when you have to give each other the sign of
Oh,
peace, shake hands with people. Some families kiss. I'm lucky. I get like the finger the finger shake. And
oh,
again, don't feel bad, mother, if you're listening. I mean, that's just, again, cold Irish family. Her parents were super cold, super Irish, both sides as Irish. Sullivan married a Sullivan. I mean, that's as Irish as you could get. And huge drinkers,
mhm.
total alcoholism in the family. She and all her siblings drink I think every day of their lives. Super high functioning, unlike my generation. But I did want to hit that because you mentioned your siblings and you're the only one. Well, before I tell you what I want to say, why I think that is, because I'm the only one, but to me, I know why that is. Why do you think you have the disorder and they don't?
Yeah. Well, I think there's external factors and I think there's internal factors. Well, just the makeup of who I am. I'm an INFJ. I'm a hypersensitive person. I'm sensitive to noise. I'm sensitive to emotions. I'm prone to thinking things are my fault. If I, like anything, if I sensed imbalance I don't know if it's my Libra nature, I'm not sure what it is. I'm an Enneagram 2. I'm not saying any of those things relate to drinking. What I'm saying is that I felt everything big. I dream big, I hurt big, I love big. And I think that I've just always been slightly uncomfortable in my skin, um, even as a young child. And yet I wanted to be seen. Like I just had this conflicting things of wanting to hide behind my mom's legs and then always wanting to be seen. And it was always a dance between that. And I learned, and I also externally always saw drinking as such a awesome thing. Like I just looked up to bold, beautiful women who had a drink in their hand and it could be any kind. It could be a long neck beer bottle and a pool stick. It could be a martini glass and a leather coat. It could be a ball gown and a champagne float. It didn't matter to me. I saw a vision that I admired with a drink in hand and I just wanted that. And I always admired free spirits. And I felt so like I'm constantly vigilant and observant and just like I'm not naturally a relaxed person. I've learned how to be more embodied and come into my skin now. But I naturally wasn't that way. So you can bet that the first time, I mean, I loved alcohol before I had a sip. Like I just knew that it was something I was never going to be a problem drinker, but I was definitely going to be a drinker. Um, but when I did finally have my first drink of alcohol at a keg party at 14, it was absolute love at first sip. I never, um, there's a line in East of Eden I read in a high school book, in a high school English class years ago, and it was one of the characters never drank her whole life, and then she finally did later in life, and she never had didn't never took a breath again without alcohol in her breath or something. I think the character was Liza or something. I tried to find it recently. I read that line in high school and I got it. like I understood that character. And she's not this likable character in the book, but as soon as I read that line, I was
Say the line again,
my
please.
girl. So
What?
I just part of
Say the line again, Jenny.
something like she never again took a breath without alcohol on her lips again or something. She put alcohol to her lips and never again, had it was something to the effect she drank every day after that.
Yeah,
And for
got it.
me, when I drank, I was happier and lighthearted. I could, talk to people that I normally would have hesitated. I felt more me, which is finally what I've gotten back to after so many years of losing myself down a bottle. But I felt more me, and I thought it was real, and it felt real, and it felt fun, and for a while it was. Um, but I just think I also was in a crowd that partied and like hard. And I gravitated towards wilder people who pushed envelopes and did things. And so I was constantly surrounded there. And then I spent my 20s down living off the Sunset Strip and working in television and with a rock and roll musician boyfriend. And I just think also the science of addiction, when you learn about it, our bodies do become addicted to addictive substances. And I really think with enough exposure and whatnot, I became physically addicted. And also it really prevented me from feeling lonely at nights when my heart was broken and I was alone. So it's a mixture of why. Now, my brother and sister drank, and I'm sure they have plenty of, they do have stories and things of nights that they wish they could redo, and they have all that, but it was never a dependency. It was never they never became a liability like I would become going out at night and, never wanting to go home and losing my phone and, just those things that you can laugh at for a while. But then as you get older and older in adulthood, it starts to become less fun, especially when it's your family member and you love them and you're watching them slowly kill themselves. So, yeah, I don't know if I was ever an example to my sister of how she didn't want to be. She's younger than me, but I always joked that I had like a second mother. And now I realize perhaps I forced her perhaps a bit into this role of having to be the driver or, take care of our hotel room key or whatever. So I'm not sure, but I'm very grateful that no one else in my family, like I want them to understand how hard it is to be an addict and to be in recovery. But at the same time, I'm so grateful they don't know how hard it is because
Yeah.
it is a really tough thing to have to overcome.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And man, so many things I want to say. First, yes, anyone can get addicted to an addictive substance, but I do think there's a distinction that no one really talks about. That I almost think calling addiction for us is a misnomer. There's addiction, and then what we have is an addiction disorder. To me, an addiction you can beat with willpower. That having chocolate after dinner, I was addicted to for a long time, and I finally just said, that's it. And I started just brushing my teeth, brushing and flossing, which I love to floss, but I always say I never want to floss twice in one night. So if I floss, I will not eat another thing. I had a gambling addiction. I lost $10,000 over several years when I was much younger, but then I gave that up cold turkey. With a disorder, it's that ingrained neural pathway that we built up so much it's convinced alcohol is the answer to everything. And unlike normal neural pathways, that if you don't use them, they atrophy and they die off. But in our case, that pathway never goes away. It gets quieter. That's what the voice is that compels us to drink. Every day we don't drink, it gets quieter, we get stronger, but it's always listening.
Yeah.
And but only alcohol can reinvigorate it. But it pounces on weakness or even on joy at times. And that to me is what kind of defines, alcoholism or any addiction disorder, is that our midbrain, they say there's neuroscience says, if everyone had a brain scan, you would know who the ones are with the disorder. We have a broken reward system. Our brains just light up differently when we see an addictive substance, in this case, alcohol.
That makes sense to me. Yeah.
So
that was my fear, I think, about getting sober. Well, I thought the whole world was drinking was such it wasn't just an identity for me. It was just a reward. I didn't know how to reward myself otherwise. And even though it wasn't real rewarding at the end, I did most of my drinking by myself at the end and was always like feeling like I was in trouble, with my husband or something. I mean, it was just terrible. But I didn't actually believe, I thought other people could quit drinking and get sober and be happy and be free. But that was not going to be me. Like, I would never actually lose the obsession to drink because I tried that before. I had a big long stretch of 13 years of like not really drinking, but then secretly drinking without people knowing or whatever. Like, it was just, I I know what it's like to quit drinking but not be in recovery, and it was so hard for me. There was so much heartbreak and so much feeling other and still trying to fit into circles where I didn't quite belong. Um, and so much acting. It was exhausting to do all the acting. But the obsession does lift. And that for me has been amazing. Very rarely do I crawl in bed next to my husband and we put on a show, after the kids have finished their homework and we've gotten home from a billion, little league and soccer and swimming. We very rarely do I hit the bed and think, how did I survive that without drinking? And I will say that when I finally stopped drinking, it was a nightly thing. I didn't know how I was going to get through math homework with my, fifth grader, or how I was going to get through this long day without the reward of a drink waiting for me when I got home. I mean, I didn't think I could go a night without drinking. Like, that's how it was. And now I almost never think about drinking when I go to bed. Um, and that is something that I don't know if we can tell other people, because even if people had told me that, I still wouldn't have believed it. So you just have to keep going and trust that it will happen, because if we still lived with the mental anguish of constantly thinking about drinking in the way that we had, and just this longing and this sadness like a void, no one would stay sober. But it's not that. It's life is so much, it's just beautiful beyond anything I ever dreamed. And I never knew that the answer was giving up alcohol. I thought it was always going to be something outside of me. But it turns out it just eliminating this one thing allowed me to say yes to all the things that I actually love and care about. It's like truly like getting to know myself for the first time and liking the person I am for the first time, which is incredible.
Yeah, it's that old quote that people in our space have all heard probably many times, but others that haven't, that sobriety is giving up one thing for everything, and it is amazing. It's so true.
There's
And I do.
another there's another quote I love. So we could talk music and quotes all day, but there's another quote. It's sobriety delivers everything that alcohol promised.
Oh,
That
right.
for me is so gold. Like, I love that.
That's amazing, because I literally was about to say my favorite quote, which I think I came up with, was that the promises of alcohol are all lies and the promises of sobriety are all true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. My favorite one, a quote that really helped me was from an unknown AA member, but he talked about all the lies. That's what made me spin the quote I just told you. But he talked about, I drank, well, it ends with, I drank to feel heavenly and I ended up feeling like hell. And it's true, you know. It's things like, I drank to be social, but I ended up isolating. I mean, everything.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And life
Yeah.
is beautiful. It
It's
really
funny.
is.
I have a background in AA, in and out for many years, and there's parts of it I just love. I love the promises. I always loved hearing shares and old timers. And many of my recovery friends are in AA and have sponsors and do the steps. And I think at some point in my life I probably will, just I feel called to do that. But you and I both met through the Luckiest Club, and that language for me, as soon as I read Laura's book and then joined the meetings, and the language that is used in more of the modern recovery spaces and whatnot, there was no stretching. There was no like trying to, reciting words that I didn't quite believe in but wanted to, or that I didn't quite know how to talk on. It just met me exactly where I was at, and it just landed and clicked so beautifully. Um, But it is funny when I think back to certain things that I heard in those very first AA meetings, like years and years ago. I still remember. And they made me mad and I didn't want to remember, but when you hear something you're meant to hear, you can't unhear it, I think, which is so funny. But I remember going there's a lot of wisdom in those rooms is what I'm trying to say, and it's really beautiful. I do like the I do like the feel occasionally of going back in there and remembering how I first heard hearing the language, how I first felt hearing the language, and where it meets me now. You know, I can kind of see how things are, but I don't know, maybe a decade ago, I'd had a bad experience at a wedding. Weddings tended to be tough, tricky things for me. And I promised my family when they found out I drank at the wedding that I would go to a meeting. And so I went to one way across town where I was guaranteed not to see anyone, of course, because that's what we do. And I walked in, and this man said to me, "Haven't seen you be here before." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm just checking it out. You know, I'm not real sure I have a problem or something." And he said, "People don't come in to check it out unless they have a problem." And I will never forget that. I was so angry at him. He said, I don't even think I heard a word of the meeting the whole time because I was sitting there just like stewing over the audacity of this, you know, guy who had a problem and I probably didn't, you know. But it's just interesting when you hear the tidbits of wisdom and how they land and I love quotes. I mean, I think of them all the time and poetry and lyrics and things like that. They can change my whole perspective and carry me through a day. And when you share one with someone else and you immediately connect, it makes it even richer. You know, someone else gets it.
Yeah, it's so true. I used to say, what's the point? Quotes are so fleeting, right? But now in sobriety, every quote I put almost right into practice or I repeat frequently and yeah, hit home. Just like lyrics. I was gonna say to you, I never like that journey line. I couldn't have told you in a million years what that
My
exact.
tongue, I have to admit, we can delete that part. But yeah, part
Wait, the part what were you saying?
of me singing at the beginning of the recording.
Phenomenal.
I'm gonna be
That was
singing
honestly
about that.
so good. And you gotta, oh my God, we could talk forever. This is gonna be a 10-parter as I feared. But have you heard me? It sounded like you have heard me sing on a one of my TLC shares, and that all started with reading the quote that I read. Don't kill the part of you that is cringe, heal the part of you that cringes. And I love that. And I initially took it almost as far as other people when someone else were to say sing and maybe they were bad, and I would just cringe and think, what the hell are they thinking? Instead of being healed and applauding someone for making that effort, even more so if they were a bad singer.
Yeah,
But
no, that's 100% where I'm at in this season of my life is trying to embrace the cringe and the awkward, going into the rooms where I mean I recently went to a poetry workshop and I don't you know, I just recently was able to call myself a writer without cringe because that felt very risky and scary to say out loud. You know, your big dreams to voice them out loud. Who am I to call myself a writer? But so I started doing that, but then I thought, gosh, I didn't even know that I really love poetry. And I went to this beautiful workshop down on the central coast of California recently with Rosemary Watola Tromer and James Crew, and walked into a room of actual poets, and we wrote and shared. And there was even some call and response singing, and it was just the most vulnerable, beautiful experience. And you can bet I felt awkward walking in there, but I knew it was also a room I wanted to be in. Sorry, my cat's wanting to be part of this. But things like that. And when I do publish something, and there's always typos, and there's always something I would immediately go back and change. And I think, embrace the typo. They know you're not using AI, and it's okay because we're you know just all we do in life is grow. And the bigger my kids get, I swear I'm growing right alongside them, every year of life. And I never want to stop growing. But I love people's imperfections. I love people's awkwardness. If you're awkward, I like you more automatically. So learning like to maybe turn that on myself and embrace and accept that part of me too, it feels like freedom. It feels really welcome and long overdue, to be honest. So I'm all about that. So the cringe, yes.
Yes, and you said embrace the cringe, which is amazing because I turned that quote, I shortened it to say embrace the cringe.
Yeah.
Just like one of our meeting leaders says, she says she's a embrace. Well, I say embrace the discomfort, and she said she's a discomfort junkie. So you need to become a
I love it.
cringe junkie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you need to do things that are cringeworthy. Is that it? And just not worry about it. And that's what got me to say, screw it. I'm gonna try singing on, these shares. And it
So
was
my mother, who has the progressive dementia, it's with her loss of memory and words has got it's as the brain continues to atrophy and things disappear, it's really interesting how her filters are not there anymore. And so she's using, when she does occasionally use words, she expresses herself much more than she ever has, and she curses now. She never did before. I mean, not a lot, but every once in a while. And it's I have to say it's refreshing and cute, but she full blown dances. Anytime a song comes on, we're in the middle of a checkout line and she's dancing, or I bring her into the YMCA to do a Zumba, and um, she's off doing her own thing. She's having more fun than anyone, and she's just there's only the present moment, and she only does what feels good. And I have to say, for someone like me who's just so tightly wound her whole life and just so afraid of how things look, to be around someone who only lives by how things feel is I call her my wisest teacher now, and I have to say it's really a gift when I remember to look at it in that way, because she is so free. um,
I love it. Yeah, that is so great. In fact, I read a great quote recently about being present. It said, "A wandering mind is an unhappy mind. What people are thinking at any given moment is a better predictor of happiness than what they are doing. Being fully engaged in what you're doing is the strongest predictor of happiness."
yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And yeah, I sing and dance all the time. I'm on the pink cloud for life. And people say all the time on calls, "Cappy, I'd love to have your energy." And I said, hey, I didn't have this starting out. I don't even have it every morning until I can't talk enough about cold shower finishes. I'm surprised it hasn't come up yet. But it's just like CrossFit. How do you know someone's a CrossFitter? They'll tell you. And someone that does cold immersion will tell you. And it's life changing. 250% dopamine kick for 3 hours.
Right, so my husband's on doing these, and he's I have occasionally done a cold plunge. I admit I feel pretty great afterward. I don't know. I just feel like a daily thing. I don't know. I
Yeah,
believe you. I believe you. I just
it's great. And I started out baby steps, 10 seconds, not cold all the way, but then cold all the way, 30 seconds. And I even do it over my cranium. Win Hoff, the
oh,
guy,
that's hardcore.
yeah, the guy who really espouses it. I never watched his video till recently. He doesn't do the head, and the head is kind of the hardest part at first. So I do it straight overhead for 30 seconds or so.
Oh
But then
my,
I dance around. I do a full cold shower dance for 3 minutes, which he doesn't even. And I make sure I I twirl to make it cold. I'm just seeking the discomfort, and but it's funny that I just watched his video and I see his energy, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm him. But if I watched that video a year and a half ago, I would have said I could never get to that energy level.
right.
And it's a big part of it. It's the ultimate. I thought I made it up. I tell people it's the ultimate mood enhancer. And then Wim actually said that on his video, mood enhancer. And I also say, and cravings overcomer. It is the number one. I will say that no one, I like to think I say some things about sobriety that no one in the world but me says. Even that really distinction between addiction and addiction disorder, I've never really heard someone. I've heard people explain it without explaining it, because it seems like it's either the neuroscientists that say it or, yeah, but they don't necessarily have the disorder. So I feel like I'm the liaison between the neuroscientists and the common man. But enough about me. But I do say it is the ultimate cravings overcomer. If you have a craving, and if you can find the willpower to not overcome the craving, because that's a big thing with this disorder. Really, willpower takes superhuman willpower to overcome. But the willpower is to do the work, which strengthens your prefrontal cortex to fight off your midbrain, which only cares about survival. And again, that's what kind of defines us. We have that neural pathway that thinks that alcohol is the answer to everything. Anyway, if you can get yourself to get in that shower, just a regular shower will change your nervous system. But if you can do a cold shower finish, it will overcome that craving.
I'll tell you what, if we do a part 2, I'll do that right before we get on, and I'll let you know.
All right.
No, I will try it. I always love a challenge, actually. I can be a little competitive.
Yeah. And the key is we have to replace the artificial dopamine hits from alcohol with natural ones, right? And there's no better way than that. 250%. And I Googled, what does alcohol give for a dopamine kick? According to Google, 150%. But then I realized that's only when it works for us, which those of us in the throes of this, what do we get? Maybe a 20% kick for 20 minutes. And that's it. As you know, it only works for us for 20 minutes, and that makes things worse. So this is 250% for 3 hours.
I love that I love how much you discuss the science of, addiction and disease and the brain and things that for me, and Dr. Cappy's version of it, it's accessible and digestible for me. Like sometimes it gets a little too dry for me, and I need, give me a metaphor here. But I love that. And I just want to say that learning about the science of addiction was pivotal for me. That was, in my, I did go to residential treatment for several weeks. When I finally got sober in August, I'll have 5 years in this August. But when I finally did go to treatment, started learning all sorts of, everything, cognitive behavioral techniques and about the science of addiction and trauma and all sorts of things and modalities. But the science part for me was so pivotal in eliminating some shame. Shame was what nearly killed me as a wife and as a mother and someone who'd already been given all these second chances, already been through this whole song and dance before. And so my secret that I was drinking again, I was ready to take to the grave because it was the shame that just kept me so silent and so sick. But as soon as you start learning about the science and what happens, literally, the changes that take place in the brain, it really helped me get a chip away at the shame. Like, it's not just you, it's really not. And your body and brain behaved exactly as they were designed to do. And that, along with being in a community who gets it, were what saved my life. And I have to say that being in a community who gets it, not only, but it's these people who told the truth and stood up, and it was one person after another sharing their story. And I just said, I admire this person so much. It became okay to say, and I'm one of you, So I think there's so much power in sharing story and collective wisdom. I always tell my husband, we've done couples counseling. We've done a lot of family therapy and stuff since I've been home, and our family is remarkable, and I'm really, really lucky. We're far from perfect, and we struggle with a lot of things, but I'm very lucky. But I told him, when I go on to an hour-long recovery meeting, and there's a few different groups that I belong to, you're hearing the collective wisdom of every person who shares. Almost all of them are in therapy. So you're getting the gold, the mind gold from each of those people who bring it into an hour of meeting. You're getting the collective wisdom of like thousands of dollars and hours spent in therapy, in this sacred gift. It is, and it's fun. I don't go to meetings so much anymore to save my ass as much as I go because, to be of service, to feel like I belong again, because sometimes I still don't so much in my everyday life. I'm one of the only people who doesn't drink. But also because it's so fun. The laughter and the levity and the realness, and an amazing human who's way across the country in Boston might be there singing, and you feel this immediate kinship and decide to jump on a call and talk about all the things. And I feel so lucky that this whole world out there. I always say that I got friends I never knew I needed or never knew I deserved. And yeah, I don't know how I got to that point in my where I was started, but I'm glad it wrapped up there because it's true. I feel really, really lucky to be in recovery.
So I love what you said, that learning about the science or neuroscience, really helped, because I think it's so key to helping overcome this thing, particularly knowing why willpower does not work, which I learned I kind of already touched on, but it's because when we get a craving, our brain releases a little bit of dopamine that causes us to seek more. I was blown away with that. But then what happens when we get a craving is our midbrain takes over. It only cares about survival, and it places alcohol or drugs, for those affected, as the number one survival priority. And the only way to fight it off is with our prefrontal cortex that literally shuts down when we get a craving. So it's just like you're in the desert for 5 days and you're offered a bottle of water and you're told you'll lose everything if you take it. But what are you going to do? You're going to take it. And then you're going to satisfy the craving. And then you're going to beg for everything back when your cortex turns back on. But that's exactly what happens. There is no willpower in the midbrain. There's no rational thought. I did a video basically defending a woman who drove with a 2-year-old, essentially hammered. But essentially the reason is we have no rational thought. And she didn't set out that day to do it. She probably woke up like we always do, wasn't going to drink that day, then thought she'd only drink a little, and before she knew it, it just got out of hand. But there's no rational thought. So people destroyed her in the comments because they're trying to apply rational thought to essentially an irrational disorder. You mentioned shame. This is a chronic brain disease, the same as Alzheimer's, but nobody questions that, and everyone has empathy for that. Would you ever shame an Alzheimer's patient for not remembering your name? No, you wouldn't. So nor should you an alcoholic, nor should an alcoholic shame themselves. And of course, as you know, we have empathy for everybody but ourselves. You would never shame someone for slipping except for yourself.
Okay, this is so interesting, and thank you for the metaphor in there with the science lesson. I love it. Wow, it's a powerful example that you offered. And it's interesting because what I often try to, well, if the conversation's in a right place, I hate the misconception that people who drink and have problem and full-blown physical addiction and whatnot, it's because they have a lack of willpower. Because I do believe willpower can only take you so far, but I also believe that the reason my addiction grew to the level that it did was because of my willpower, because I remained so diligent in moderating. I would still get up and do the workout, show up, have everything look perfect on the outside. I was so polished and killed myself in trying to protect my addiction that it was able to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow because of my willpower, because I was so good at managing to keep performing. And so there's like this, I've heard people say to me, oh, well, I could never become an alcoholic because I'm I have too much willpower or something. And it's an interesting thing that you need willpower to stay sober, and you need to be dedicated and, soft on yourself, but tough when it comes to sobriety, like all the things. But on the other hand, part of my problem of why my addiction grew so out of control was because I am I rode myself so hard to keep on that tightrope for so long, if that makes sense. It's kind of an interesting thing that not everyone was just, I didn't even try it. And, it's as if something like addiction happened to them. Mine happened in spite of all the ways that I was in control. You can't control addiction when it finally, I don't know, it's a difficult thing to explain, and I don't think I'm doing a good job, but
Well,
it's an interesting
yeah,
thing. I have tremendous willpower and it could only take me so far, and was also what took me so far in my addiction, if that makes sense.
yeah. No, I was touching on it when I mentioned the buddy that's struggling right now, and
Yeah.
he said, "Why? I'm so disciplined." It's like, yeah, this is a different. That is the problem.
Many
That
of
you,
us are.
yeah.
Many of us are so disciplined.
I felt so bad. I dated a woman whose father was an alcoholic, and she was speaking very negatively of him. And I said, "Do you, without even knowing anything about him, I guarantee he was disciplined in every other area of his life except for that." And she nodded her head. And I said, "So why do you think just magically he just had no willpower when it came to this?" And I explained what I explained to you. It's different when it comes to an addiction disorder. It
Yeah.
even sounds like you didn't fully realize it when you talked about you versus your siblings, like that you just got addicted to an addictive substance and they didn't. And that also implies you lacked as much willpower when it came to alcohol. But it's more than that. And they say it's 50 to 60% hereditary. I think it's even potentially more than that. Case of my siblings, I take 100% or 99 after my mother's Irish side, where there's 9 cousins, 7 of them either are in recovery or should be. One died from drugs and alcohol. And the only 2 of the 9 that aren't, my brother and sister. And why? They take 99 after the Italian side. And, that's not a hard and fast rule for every, doesn't mean no Italians are alcoholics, doesn't mean every Irish are, but get this, 70% of men in Ireland are hazardous drinkers. So there's no doubt in my mind a larger percentage
Yeah.
of Irish. So I've always known it's hereditary for 100% in my case. Now, were there also some social things? Sure. I actually just hit me talking to you. I do think I was born with more of a gift of the gab, so I felt more pressure to use my gifts. And I do think perhaps that affected me in high school and college, where I was almost mute, especially in college. Never mind my high school experience. It was worse in college. I was in all the cool crowd. And I remember you on your share saying you weren't in with the cool crowd. I say I had the A crowd personality, but the B or maybe even only C level confidence. So I never said a word around them. And it was torture. Whereas my brother and sister, I think, just accepted their personalities almost for what they were and didn't feel that extreme pressure. The whole reason I drank, if I could sum it up in one word, was just pressure to entertain, to be perfect, to people please, all traits my mother has, which I completely take after. And I'll let you, wrap it up saying, and I consider them almost, I love this term. It's a compliment. I use it for my sales engineers and other people. They're unapologetically boring. And I say it's the same as teenage boys, and that was a big breakthrough for me. I thought I had a drink once. We were doing dinner with another family last Christmas, and I was trying not to drink. But I said, I've got to entertain these people. And I said, no, I watched these teenage boys that have felt no pressure to make conversation. And so I just adopted their disposition. And I watched my mother and the other mother drink their wine and do all the work to make conversation. So,
Right.
do you relate to that?
I related so much.
Yeah,
So it's funny. So you had the three P's, which were pressure, people pleasing, and perfectionism.
like that.
All three of those, I check for 100%. I also have the three P's, which explain my trajectory for drinking, which was it was a party, then a priority, then a problem. So I like how you and I both have the three P's kind of explaining how we got here. Something you said, and I think you have this magnetic, contagious, fun personality. It's hard to imagine you being silent, I believe it as well. I think what I realize now is that I felt like I had to show up in every space on. Like I had to be on in some way. I had to be engaging, funny, have witty comments, have whatever, like make these connections. I put everything felt like such a big deal to me that I had to be on. And So drinking was like the cheat card to show up and be on. You could fake it. It was fake energy. It was fake, just kind of blur those rough edges of awkwardness and all those things. Um, and learning that I don't have to be on, I can just show up and just be has been really hard. And the more you practice it, the better it is. And it's the only way that I've ever been present and actually like tuned in, just like really actually embodied in a moment with someone and enjoying it. But I relate so much to that. And I think that we live in a society that just really puts a premium on extroverts and people who can show up and draw the attention and things like that, where there's us as individuals, however we're designed, but then also like what we look at as being liked and preferred in society. And when that doesn't match up, we try to find ways to meet that. And for many of us, the answer seemed like alcohol. And it kind of was, but it's alcohol is the thief that steals your wallet and helps you look for it. So
Steals your wallet and then helps you look for it so you can buy more?
it's have you not heard that quote?
I haven't.
It's like someone pretending like they're on your side when they're the ones who caused
Oh,
the
God,
harm.
God, I'm glad I asked. And see, my sober confidence allows me to admit,
Well, there was a lot of money spent as well,
yeah, that's why people talk about that. So that's immediately where my head went. But that is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah,
alcohol is the thief that steals your wallet and then helps you look for it. So
that is so good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I remember your speaker show, you mentioned you've loved it first sip, and for a long time you thought it loved you back, but then you found
yeah.
out, definitely we have so much more to talk about, but it
Oh,
truly
we
is.
do. I know.
It is the definition of an abusive relationship, which
Mhm.
I love the analogy of who of us has not questioned a friend or someone in the press we've read about that got sadly perhaps even died at the hands of an abusive boyfriend that they kept going back to.
Mhm.
Yet that is exactly what our relationship was with alcohol. We romanticize it. We only remember the good things. We kept giving it another chance. I love the quote, you've given alcohol a million chances. Why not give sobriety a few
Oh,
more
that's good.
chances? Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. Yeah.
It's it's so true. There's a Casey Ballerini song I always quote about Miss Me More, about she broke up with a boyfriend and then she said, yeah, I thought I'd miss you, but I missed me more.
Right.
And it's so true. Rediscovering
Yeah.
ourselves in
Yeah,
sobriety.
I think when I did my last share, I talked about losing the starring role in my own life. And that's really how what alcohol did for me is I became like a supporting character and I was handed a script I didn't like and I didn't know that I had the power to change it or even speak up. And I was just constantly wanting to be seen but then terrified of being seen, like I was hiding, it was just, yeah, it was just a really sad, quiet, shrinking existence for me. And it's not about having the limelight or being known or, liked or any of that. It's just about having autonomy and every night when my head hits the pillow, not to get emotional and cheesy in any way, but I really am proud of the person that I am when no one's looking. And I lived without that for so long, you know. And when I wake up in the morning, I'm just on steady ground. I'm not needing to dig myself out of some metaphorical ditch, and thinking who's mad at me and what, clean up on aisle 5 and all that. It's just I'm on steady ground. And sometimes I just stay there and sometimes I can go way up. And my life is so messy. There's so many things that I'm dealing with and I'm overwhelmed and I'm exhausted and I doubt all the time, am I doing this right as a parent? Am I showing up enough as a wife? Am I, you know, whatever. But fundamentally I have my own back, and I never had that. And that's what alcohol took from me. And there's a steadiness now in my bones that I didn't have. And I'm just so grateful.
Yeah, that's amazing. so many things you reminded me of. By the way, you mentioned, I think you used the word cheating, and you used alcohol to cheat. I think I made up the line. I used it to cheat, yeah, to cheat the system. I didn't make up that concept, obviously, but alcohol, yeah, used it to cheat the system. Ever since I discovered the magic of it, 3 months into college, first time I drank, amazingly, whole nother story.
Yeah.
But I never so fit in, never felt like I so fit in on the planet as when I drank, and that's an amazingly powerful reinforcement that again reinforces that neural pathway that
Hmm.
sticks with us, that thinks alcohol is the answer to everything. And that's why it never takes no for an answer. And that's why the voice is so hard to resist and to just start circling back on topics, and you just kick me off when you have to. But I got a woman on a share. I'll never forget. It's so lucky. I would say you got to attend, especially in the first year, every meeting you can. I had at my pizza shop, we'd be slammed. I'd still have my Bose headset. I'd have one ear in, still
Love it.
clinging every word. And there's so many times that I can't imagine if I missed that meeting, including that great AA quote I mentioned to you, that all the lies of alcohol. That quote really went a long way for me to quit. And so amazing, I was on this call. A woman said, "Oh, my husband told me I just lack willpower, that I'm just weak. I need no willpower." And I guess he's right. And thank God she said it to Miss Keola Rains, who we both know is an amazing, gifted coach and moderator in our community. And she was actually on Reframe originally. So I go way back with her. In fact, the first time I ever shared in her meeting, she goes, "Cappy, with that energy, when you hit a year of sobriety, you can take over one of my meetings." And actually, a beautiful moment when I hit my year, like 3 months ago, she just happened to be on the call. I never really attended her calls. She just happened to be on Maureen's call, one and only time ever. And so I got to say that, "Keola, I'm now at a year, so you owe me." So yeah, making
Beautiful.
me misty.
No
But
coincidence. Love it.
yeah, but to finish, so when that woman said, my husband said I lack willpower, I'm weak, Gil said, "Oh no, no," she was not going to let her get away with that, or him. And she, on the spot, I think, came up with that it's willpower to do the work. That's where the willpower can come in. But
Right.
when you're in the throes of addiction, and when you're under that hypnosis, as I like to call it, going to the liquor store is like an out of body experience. You don't want to go, but you can't stop yourself. And so it's the willpower to do the work. And I learned, why does the work work? And again, I'm the only one I ever heard really fully explained this way. The reason the work works is because you're strengthening your prefrontal cortex to fight off your midbrain. And that's why it works. All the work is doing hard things sober, or it's things, even cold immersion strengthens your prefrontal cortex. But
Okay. There's
yeah,
one other thing I wanted to mention, and that is the beauty of modern recovery, that Zoom and this whole uh, landscape that's pretty new and just makes this community available. I could be at the grocery store, I could be in the school pickup line, I could whatever, camera off, AirPods in, and I'm clued in, and the thing that I love is when the first attempts at getting sober and whatnot, and it was like, okay, you're carrying all this stuff around all day long, and maybe there's a meeting that night and you're going to drive there. And I got sober during COVID. And so it was pull up outside of a church, get the folding chair out of the car, get a blanket and a mask and go sit outside in a parking lot in December. It was, um, took a lot of willpower to keep showing up after full long days to go sit there and bring all the accumulation from the day or from the past couple days, however often I went, and bring it there. Whereas here was something happens. And when you're trying to recover from alcohol and alcohol is on your mind 24/7 from the minute you wake up and trying to, trying to succeed at this, how amazing that there's this place you can go almost any hour with people from around the globe speaking. You're going to hear something that you need to hear. And I just think, thank goodness. I mean, I don't know what I would look like my sobriety. I'd hope that I'd still be sober. I hope that I would still have this, all these things that have happened in the past almost 5 years, but I don't know what it would look like without the landscape that has changed so much, just in the past few years. And A lot of people coming out with memoirs, a decade ago and in recent years, really normalizing this type of journey. I'm so grateful for those people, those pioneers who did that and made the rest of us, give us guidebooks to go. It's every journey is unique and it has to be our own. But there's been a lot of people holding lampposts for me out along the way, and I'm just so glad. So I always think like to go to one meeting a day is wonderful and can also often fill our cup. But if you're in early recovery, it's sometimes a minute by minute, hour by hour thing, and there are places you can go. Many of which you and I are both part of it, several of them. So I just want people to know that there's a place for you out there, and it works.
It's amazing. I know AAers are so dedicated to that. I think they wouldn't even consider an alternative, but I would think such a great way to augment. Although I guess even AA meetings, you can go get online now. Because I was going to say, just the ability to get on to meetings at home is just huge.
Camera off in your robe, or camera on in your robe. It's even better. Thank you to those who do that. It took me a while to get that authentically.
Yeah,
crying.
I love it. Emma Jane once put in the comments, do not apologize for crying or your appearance. And it's so true. Somehow I never knew to apologize for crying. And I cringe when people do. I cringe in the right way, I think, when people do it. Because no, crying is cathartic. And vulnerability is our greatest act of courage. Brene Brown.
That is so true.
Yeah.
That is so true. We use it interchangeably with the word brave, but they're very different. And to live with courage is just to speak one's heart. And I think that's so beautiful. My dog is now officially, you can hear the husky howl coming from the door. He has social anxiety and separation anxiety, which is a really fun mix.
Amazing.
It's been such a fun conversation. I'd love to come back and keep chatting further. Quotes, music, life.
Yes. Speaking of music, Ellen was saying, I've never seen Coldplay, and get this, they're coming this July, and I'm going to be in Lake Placid with my mother rented a house very nicely. Thank you, Mother. But
I think they'll be touring for a long time to come. But yeah, my husband and I used to do a thing where, and hopefully we'll pick it back up, but we used to pick a band and go to that city to see them. So we'd go to Austin or Portland or Seattle, Nashville. Anyway, it's a fun way to see a band also, and a city in the same time. So that's always fun to do. And yay that I remember my concerts now. I don't have to Google the set list when I wake up.
Exactly. That's why I'm dying to see them now, especially in sobriety. And just Chris Martin. I mean, just such a gifted
performer. So positive.
Oh my God.
He's a really rare gem. Yeah.
Yeah. Unbelievable. So, all right. And that's the story of my life, by the way. I either have no plans or I'm triple booked. And that's a great example. I never go anywhere. And the 1 week this summer I'm going anywhere, Coldplay's in town. And I had already bought Lumineers tickets at Fenway Park, but it's actually the night I get back. So I am going to make that one with my nephew.
That would be a great show.
All right, awesome. I'm immediately texting you to get another booking date out of you. And we'll go from there. So, all right, Jenny. Awesome.
Thanks so much, Cappy.
All right. Thank you. Oh, and stay on just for a second after I hit end here. Just for 1 second. All right. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.